for
Yeah.
accounting compared to the rest
Yeah.
of us, for sure.
Back in the day, I've not been doing that now. Boy, close to 20 years now. Not quite 20, but I did it for quite a number of years. So,
I envy you.
um,
If I have to count past 10, I have to take my shoes off. Like it's
well,
not my skill set.
yeah, I do tell people I'm a slave to a calculator. It was trust but verify.
That's right.
Um, and so, uh, but anyways, that's me.
I
So on
think
to Camp Digital.
Yeah, well, no, I think you're going to like this. That's actually almost like a paid segue because a lot of this data has a lot to do with, I think, what's happening in the market as well. So I'll just jump right in. It looks like we got a pretty
Sure.
good crowd here. If anyone does have any questions or anything, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on it to the left as well. And we also have Heather who can kind of keep me honest. But we really want to talk about some of the unique challenges coming into the market right now. It's not just an election season, it's the shoulder season, it's a lot of other fun things. So we put together information. We've worked with really closely with our friends over at Google, as well as Microsoft to help us pull together some of this information, which I'm going to share with you guys. And then there is a little bit of takeaway from here so that hopefully everyone can process a few things. If we have extra time at the end, I do have a little bonus content for you guys too, with some updates coming to local service ads and Google Business Profile. So that will come at the very end. So I will try and get through this as quickly as we can. But again, ask any questions that you would like to ask along the way. So planning for Q4. These are some of the learnings we've got, right? We know every 4 years, the election season brings a natural decline in demand for services. It happens. We're seeing it. Google has given us their predictions on what happens to demand trends. I think a lot of people hold their breath. Marketing costs also rise because channels become saturated with campaign spending. Some states worse than others. If you're in Pennsylvania right now, I cannot imagine you would turn on a TV and not see an ad for a presidential candidate, let alone the rest of the ticket. That really saturates the traditional marketing, particularly, right? Your television, your radio, your mail, everything becomes oversaturated. This season, I think, particularly this election's a little bit even, people are, whatever side you're on, it's a little bit more nerve-wracking. So we're seeing that natural decline in customer demand come down even a little bit harsher. And then those costs are really rising. I think this is going to, as they are every 4 years, but going to be the largest spending election that we've ever seen in our history. This combined with customer sentiment declining a little bit, and almost 1 in 5 Americans already maxed out on their credit. I couldn't make this play right, so bear with me here, but this little chart here, look at this. That's non-mortgage debt. I mean, even though it's probably small on your screen, it's pretty striking how wild that is. 1 in 5 Americans are already maxed out on their credit cards. You do not have to believe a word that comes out of my mouth, by the way. You can Google any of this stuff or just shoot us a note at the end. We'll give you the resources where we pulled all this from. But that came right from the Federal Reserve. And what they mean by max debt is at least 90% of their credit is being utilized. That's 1 in 5. That's wild. So these factors, along with some of the projections that we've been getting from our partners, are really shaping up to make a relatively challenging fourth quarter. We're going to combine that. Any questions on that before I move forward? Okay. We get a lot, because of this, we get a lot of people asking us, hey, should I push? Should I maintain? What should I do with my marketing spend? But we're going to combine that first with some updates into the customer journey. This one, if you take nothing else away from our entire time here today, take a screenshot of this, copy this, take this, because this one blew my mind. And if there's one thing you can do to help improve your business, it's going to be in this number, which we'll talk about. But Google did a study of customers who purchased in the home services space. So they had to have made a purchase in the last 12 months. And what they found was 30% of the people purchased that same day. 29% purchased day 2 to 7. I know when we think about it, we're all like, wait, what? How are they wait? Day 2, day 7, that's not a huge time to wait, right? But that means almost as many people purchase after the initial contact as purchase with that initial contact. And actually, I'm going to go a little off script here because this is so important to me. If you're not doing something to capture those customers day 2 to 7, you are literally wasting half your leads without having to even invest that much more money. But I promise we're going to come back to that in a second. But if you take nothing away from this, it's that. And I'll tell you, I hate when people do this to me because, like, when Google says it, Google's a pretty big brain in the sky. But I went out to a couple of our larger clients and I vetted this by them and said, hey, can you look and tell me what you see in your data? And sure enough, it was pretty damn near close to these numbers, a little bit to the smaller side of purchased day 1 versus purchased day 2 to 7 that they were seeing. So if you could do nothing else, I cannot recommend hanging your hat on this one a little bit and talking through this with some of your team members. Customer journey is continuing to evolve. The average number of brands being considered with the conversion action has increased from last year. So not only is it taking us a little bit longer necessarily to buy, think about the credit issues, think about customer sentiment, but they're actually considering more brands than they were last year too. And then this one just is really interesting too. Customers with your brand, if they're familiar with your brand, they're more likely to convert, 34% more likely to convert. This is, again, part of that changing customer journey. So where does that take all of us? And this is what we're going to talk. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. The multi-touch point too. This was actually wild to me too. Instinctually, I did not think about this until they said this. But customers fill out a lead form or have a conversion action of any kind, use 4.7 different touch points in their journey. 3.1 of those are digital. So they aren't just looking at your website or your ad or your reviews, right? They're checking out up to 3.1. I just saw the new stat for this that's coming from Google. This one was from earlier in the year. There's a new one just coming out. We weren't supposed to see it yet, but that 4.7 actually turned to 5.1. So customers are even looking at more information before they decide to make that first transaction. What is all of this saying? I think hopefully we're going to look at this and realize there's an opportunity here. It sounds a little scary. Customer sentiment's down. It's expensive to advertise in traditional means. It's going to be a little bit more competitive. Customers are considering multiple customers or multiple vendors when they're making their decision. They're taking a little bit more time to do it. But to me, this is where the real opportunity lies, personally. Because if we lean into these things, if we understand what the customer's mindset is and we lean into it, imagine if we just get back another 10% of those customers that were day 2 to 7 with a simple follow-up campaign. I don't mean to say your time isn't worth anything because it's time invested, but it's almost a $0 investment to try and go after some of those customers when I can sure as tell you that your competitors aren't going to be doing that because they don't have some of this information. So what? It's my great slide here. Do I advertise? Do I pull back? What do I do? So we went through and we looked at 10,000 conversions. And what we did was we looked at shoulders to kind of simulate what we're coming into fourth quarter. So for anyone who doesn't know, fourth quarter is when 2 weeks, fourth quarter is starting. And that's what we're kind of talking about here. So we've got some time to make a plan, but not a lot. We simulated that with 10,000 conversions, not like 20, not 50. We looked at 10,000 conversions across the whole of the United States and Canada to try and figure out what the best thing to do is. And a lot of people say, hey, do I spend more money or do I pull back? And what we found, which is pain in the rump for you guys, but there actually isn't one answer that worked. What you really have to identify is what your primary goal is. So let me tell you what I mean here. So when we became more aggressive, said we're going to spend more money, more than our standard 10 to 15% for a conversion, right? Most people say for marketing, if you're growth, you want to spend 10 to 15%. We leaned way into it. And we said, we're going to spend what it takes to keep those boards totally full. We did see an increase in lead volume, and it did cost more with that aggressive bidding. But top line, we were able to really move. As you can imagine, what suffered was the bottom line, EBITDA. But you can spend into this coming shoulder, spend more money in your planning, and capture a lot of return on a lot of top line revenue. The other option we looked at with 5,000 conversions was what happens if we pull back on spending and do things like infrastructure investments, right? Outbound call center, things like that. Our top line did not move as much, but the bottom line, the EBITDA really grew. Why would I be telling you guys all that? Because really, marketing should always be second to operations. And really what I think moral to this story in this webinar today is you really determining what your goal is, right? What your driving North Star is, which one of these things are you going to try and focus on as we go through this, right? So we know there's going to be slowdown. We know there's opportunity. Are we going to try and plant our flag around top line revenue? And that makes sense in some cases. I know a lot of people are like, why would I ever do that? If you're growing like crazy, if you're trying to take market share, if you just hired 10 guys and have 10 new trucks, right? You need to sometimes focus on that top line for a little bit of time. Or are you just, hey, listen, I'm going to get through this. I've got a pretty well established brand, a pretty well established market. I'm not necessarily worried about growth right now, but I do really want to focus on that EBITDA, that bottom line. So I'm going to maintain and pull back. Any questions on any of that so far? Nope, makes sense. So what we found that doesn't work is when you waffle back and forth. And this is probably, I think, one of the biggest challenges we're going to have as we enter fourth quarter. It's really going to be critical that you define your operational goals, and marketing always comes second to your operational goals. You cannot people ask me all the time, like, how much should I spend? How much would I need to spend in my market? You cannot answer that question until you understand the operational goals. Something we talk about quite often is like, how much of your business is coming from repeat, whichever one you pick doesn't even matter. You've got all the different operational things in there as well. What's your repeat referral business, right? What's your cancellation rate? What are some of these other KPIs we can really focus on? It would be very, very, very goal driven, and then understand those KPIs, which is going to lead us to our very first kind of next step, homework assignment. If I could leave you guys with one thing in this scenario, it would be to make sure you sit down with your team and identify your goals. Are you going to be top line driven in fourth quarter or bottom line EBITDA driven in fourth quarter? Makes a huge difference. And not just to your digital marketing partners. Everybody should be made aware of this. What are you spending on Angie leads? How much are you willing to go into Home Advisor? What am I doing in the local papers? All of your entire marketing should be heavily driven by identifying your goals and then your KPIs. A great exercise I do with a lot of people, and you guys can do this yourselves, it'll blow your mind, is if you need 100 leads a month and your repeat and referral business is about 50%, means you only need to buy 50 leads. If that repeat, and say you're buying those at $100 a lead, where's our accountant? Kevin, what's 50 times 100? I could probably even done that one, huh? But if you drop that repeat and referral and get 60, now I only need 40. That savings is real. So understanding those KPIs, identifying the goals, how many jobs do I need? Where do they need to come from? Am I going to be top line driven? Am I going to be EBITDA driven? And then your KPIs to measure against it will make a wild difference. And you don't have to get that crazy on this. Like, you don't have to have a MBA from someplace to do this. It's really, how many jobs do I need? What's my booking rate? What's my repeat referral rate? What's my cancellation rate? And what's my average cost per conversion? Those tell you a lot. I would also, if you want to get a little more into it, add your run for revenue in there too, because that's going to help you with understanding your return on ad spend. Make sense? Awesome. Moving right along. I cannot stress this one enough. Having your goals does no good unless you share it with everyone. And I don't just mean like your marketing partners. I mean your general managers, your service managers, your CSRs, your dispatchers. Share all of those goals with everyone so they understand. I was just talking about him yesterday. There was a guy who I absolutely adore. His name was Bill Kerrigan. He was at Three Mountains Plumbing in Portland, Oregon. And he blew my mind one day. His LSA was killing it, and he called me and he said, "Hey, I want to pull back on my local service ads." And I'm like, "What? That's against my religion. Like, Bill, what are we doing here?" And he said, "Trust me, Katie." So we pulled back on his local service ads, and he called me and he said he had the best EBITDA month that he'd had in a long time. And I said, "Well, what was it?" He said, "When there was less leads coming in, and I told everyone to focus on the quality that they were delivering on each one of those leads, how they were handling the phone call. They didn't think there was just another call right behind it. They had the best EBITDA month." It was great. It was a great learning for me too. Sometimes it's not just about that first number on the board, right? It's about understanding those goals the whole way through and sharing them with everybody. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not seeing any chat, so we'll keep going. And then review them. Review them. I think meetings are critical to ensuring your partners, the stakeholders, everybody aligns with those goals. Inspect what you expect. It's kind of old school, right? Make sure that you're all driving, everyone's in sync with those business objectives and driving those best results. Any questions on any of that? Okay, I'm gonna get into some of this bonus content then. I think you guys might have some questions around this for sure here, but before I do though, let me go back to this a second. If I leave you guys with nothing, there's a couple key takeaways here. One is you got to understand your primary goal. What is it? And share it with everybody. The second one, I want to just take you guys back to a second here. Is this little ditty. When I saw this top line here, the speed to purchase, I was taken back. It's not something I would normally think about for our market. It's not something I normally think about the trades. Are you telling me somebody whose water heater is leaking is going to wait a day or two? They're finally starting to see that in the market. Are you telling me somebody whose air conditioning is out and it's 90 degrees in South Florida is going to wait a day or two? We're actually starting to see that in the market. So please, please, yeah, page 100%. It's wild to me. But you can double your investment, double on your investment, double your return on investment by simply putting a solid follow-up process. And I'm not talking about having to invest in major tech. If you have it, that's awesome. But the good old-fashioned outbound phone call, I saw you called in yesterday. How did it go? An email out of whatever CRM you're using, right? A follow-up email out of Outlook if you have to, whatever you've got. But if you're following up with those 10 phone calls you got today, and 5 of them, let's do this, 3 of them booked and I sold, that means 7 didn't. What am I doing with those other 7? And if I can get one more out of that 7 and move that 30% to 40%, that makes a difference. Every single day, that can make the difference between beating my expectations, making my number, hitting the budget or not. All right. If there's no questions on that, I will flip to kind of some of this bonus content. Does that work for everybody? Thumbs up. All right, cool. All right. So here's some stuff that just kind of came hot off the press. I'm going to flip through this one here first real quick. Everybody have a local service ads account? And everybody have a Google Business Profile account? Yeah, I'm hoping. Tommy, you're like the only poor guy I can see, so I feel bad for you. I'm gonna keep looking at your face over here. Yeah, yeah, right. If you have a Google Business Profile and you have a local service ads, pay attention. If you don't, for all things holy, go get them. They're the best two. Google Business Profile is the best return on investment. LSA is second best return on investment. But Google is strengthening that connection between LSA and GBP. What they're going to do over the next few weeks is next few weeks, this is happening. So get on this too, by the way. Every LSA account will need to be connected to a verified Google Business Profile account. Any LSAs not connected to a verified GBP will be suspended. This came out of, I don't know this part. What I'm telling you is true. The rest I'm going to tell you is anecdotal because I talk to local service ads quite a bit. But the story everyone talks about was there's a park in Seattle called Gasworks Park that had like 100 Google Business Profiles attached or local service ads attached to it. So Gasworks Park had a Google Business Profile and all these LSAs were attached to it because it had thousands of reviews and like a 4.9, which is not the intent. So Google's saying, hey, wait a minute, we want to make sure that that Google Business Profile and that local service ads are truly connected and that it's verified and in good standing. So if your LSA is not connected to a verified Google Business Profile, it will be suspended. And they're also going to make sure there is a link between the two accounts. And this is the takeaway. If you guys could write one more thing down for me, this will be huge for you. You're going to want to make sure that the admin on your local service ads account is also an admin on your Google Business Profile. That's how they're going to verify that those two really belong together. The other option is a phone number match, which I'm not a huge fan of because I love to inspect what I expect and I like to have different numbers on there for call tracking purposes. But if you can't get the admin, you might need to update this. But the biggest takeaway is make sure your admin on your Google Business Profile is also an admin on your local service ads. Otherwise, you run the risk of those disconnecting and losing your LSA account. Hopefully everybody is writing that down because that is big news and that is wild. It's also an opportunity. I hate to look at opportunities when my competitors have failures, but anybody that doesn't have that connected is going to have major issues shortly, and that might be our opportunity to take some ground. Are there any questions on that? You can put it in the chat or chime in.
What is Google doing on verifying? I've got like some competitors, and when I look on the map, do the geo gridding and I see competitors that I know don't have locations in certain areas, but they still pop up and with no address or anything. It's like, I'm working hard to try to show up on the map, and they're showing up as number one and number three on one of them with
Right.
two different locations when they do have a separate phone number, but no location.
I think that's part of, Kevin, of what we're starting to see with what's happening with Google verifying the GBPs. And I don't know Google Business Profiles, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Google's gotten a little bit more aggressive on the Google Business Profiles as of late. Imagine if they have an LSA account, local service ads account, that isn't connected to a GBP, or vice versa, the GBP isn't, you're going to start to see those start to de-rank in a sense, right? So they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And Google Business Profile isn't a paid service. So it's a little bit more challenging for Google. But I think you're starting to see this as really the first of them trying to make sure that these are valid and accurate connections and accurate accounts. The big one is with some of the PEs, and I see a few small PEs on this call, so they might hate this, but when the PEs acquire and roll up, they tend to keep some of those properties for the purpose of footprint. That is going to also be a significant challenge as Google cracks down on demonstrating that those are still in business with local service ads as well. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but it's definitely something.
It did. It's tough to compete knowing that, how much of the market goes to that map for selecting a vendor. And, I feel like I've got one arm tied behind my back trying to do it, the way
100%.
you're supposed to do it. And, I don't know if I'm guessing they knowingly do what they're doing. So,
I think you're right, but
uh,
I'll tell you, Kevin, that's why I get so excited about something like this. And again, I don't like success being at somebody else's failure, but anybody who isn't making sure those admins match, right? Who isn't making sure all that's connected, those accounts are going to go dark. There's going to be a small reckoning, I think, that's going to happen with this if people aren't prepared for this rolling out. Somebody asked when this is effective. Google never gives us an exact date when they roll these things out, but they did tell us it's going to be happening in the next few weeks. They told me that last week, so my guess is probably, I would guess by this time October, so by mid-October, this will be in effect.
So Katie, could I ask you a question? So if we run Service Titan and we're obviously running tracking numbers on everything. So for our LSA and our GBP has two numbers, should we get in there real quick and put the same number on both of those?
I wouldn't, I wouldn't because you're tracking that way. Just make sure, Tom, that the admin that you've got in your GBP is the admin on your local service ads. And by all things, please make sure that it's you, right? Or someone who owns the business, like you in your case, but like the business owner should be the owner on both. You should be
Okay.
the primary owner or admin on Google Business Profile and on your local service ads.
Yeah, we had a problem a few months ago with we do rug cleaning, like high end or rug cleaning. We had somebody actually impersonating us and had gotten linked, and I spent hours and still couldn't get it unlinked. And finally, a little bit of changes did do that on our LSA. I mean, they might be out there someplace. I can't find them every day, but we went as far as having pick up a rug at a house, and we followed them. We put a tracker in a rug. My son and I did it. It felt like we were Columbo.
No, I love that. That's like that. Remember the old shows like in the 80s or To Catch a Predator? You guys
Yeah,
are a little Catch a Predator, but I love that. Well,
yeah.
and this will
We
help with
tracked
that.
this guy for 3 hours across town. We were pissed.
This, I love it. This note to self, don't mess with Tom. But this will help with a lot of that because it's got to be connected. So it would have broken. By the way, what Tom's talking about too, you guys, if you're not looking at your Google Business Profile regularly, please, for the love of God, do, because people can steal your stuff. You can go in, you just do a real quick plumber near me. Let's see if I can get one to pop up here. I can go into a Google Business Profile. Um,
That hasn't been claimed.
yeah, no, even if it's been claimed.
Okay.
I'll grab my friends at Bonfeed reviews. Of course, it's not coming up. And if you get a Google Business Profile to pop up, this one's red, you can come in and claim it. So a lot of times you'll have the opportunity to claim in here, even if it's been claimed. You guys have probably seen it where it like says suggest and edit or claim it. You're gonna want, I already own this, that's probably why it's not coming up, but it'll normally be right up in here. Anyone can claim ownership and you only have a couple of days to say, no, that's not the real owner. So pretty wild. Make sure you're watching that stuff. And then someone wrote, our LSA went dark because our insurance was expiring in the next month and insurance couldn't produce a new COI until it was time to renew. Is that a risk for my GBP being suspended? It's not going to go the other way. It won't go your LSA to your GBP. It should not have gone dark because you generally have up until that time frame. You might want to check to make sure there wasn't any other policy violations in there. But like a couple of days ago to wait for the COI for VSA. So if your Google business profile goes down, that will affect your LSA. If your LSA goes down, it will not affect your GBP directly. It is a signal to there. So if they see that plus a couple other things, it could cause issues, but it won't go down hard. You generally just get a re-verification request. What action should we take regarding the phone number? I am not a huge fan of matching the phone numbers because of tracking purposes. I'm just telling you what Google said as an option to verify the two. You do not need to do that if the admin matches on both your LSA and your GBP. So if your LSA admin and your GBP admin are the same email address, right? So in my case, katie@campdigital.com, right? If that is on both, you're fine. It will automatically take care of it. If you can't do that for some weird reason, then you've got to make sure their phone numbers match. Make sense? Yep. Yes, Elvis, you're right. Okay. One other thing, when the GBP links to LSA, praise God on this one, the LSA reviews are going to merge into your GBP if they're the verified reviews, and we will stop getting reviews through LSA. So if you have 10 verified reviews on your local service ads accounts and they're not already reviewed you on your GBP, those will merge into your Google Business Profile. And then you'll stop getting reviews through local service ads.
Katie, it looks, sorry to interrupt you. It looked like Corey had a chat question in chat too.
With consumers being 34% more likely to convert with brands that they're familiar with, and it being shoulder season now, does it make sense to focus on awareness campaigns for Q4? Reduce it? Yes. Yeah, Corey, that is a phenomenally thought out question, Corey. So thanks, Heather, for pointing it out. I think awareness campaigns are going to become more and more important in the market. There's a way to do both, though. Some of the products Google offers can help with awareness and conversions at the same time. So yes, my answer to that is yes. And to rephrase that for other folks that maybe don't have Corey's background, if I have time and energy, should I be doing stuff that's promoting my brand to give people awareness of my brand? Yes, 100%. And then Kevin wrote, we segment out campaigns by phone number. So to track our GBP performance, we have a separate phone number that doesn't match the NAP. Is this an issue? No. Google is. And by the way, I always preface this with, yes, 10 people, you get 11 answers and 12 are probably right. But mine comes directly from Google. They are completely aware that people do this, that they have this tracking issue. When I was talking to the gal that runs LSA, she even suggested, I don't know if you guys know this, but in GBP, you could have more than one phone number. You can have a phone number and an alternate number. She even said you could put it in as the alternate number. I have seen the alternate number show, so that's why I don't want to mix those. But Google is aware that that happens. They're aware that people are using tracking numbers. They're aware that dynamic number insertion probably exists on your site. There's a base number you can put in a lot of places, but Google understands that as a signal. Hopefully that answered your question, Kevin. And then Sarah, oh, hi, Sarah. Not sure if this helps, but I don't want to derail the meeting, but is there a way to get a secondary phone number in your Google Business Profile? Yes. You can put it on there. Oh, you're saying that. Yep. Also for LSA, you can have two phone numbers, but you need to call the LSA helpline to enter it. Yes. You can do that. I have seen, Sarah, that fire though. That's the only caveat to it, but you and I are on the same page. All right. A couple little bit more bonus content things, and I promise I'll let you guys get on your way. Booking updates. This is starting to roll now, actually. So if you have booking enabled on your Google Business Profile, but not your LSA, it's going to automatically push to your LSA if you're on Service Titan, Jobber, or Workies. So if you're using Service Titan and you get the new Service Titan schedule engine update, it's on your Google Business Profile. It'll push into LSA automatically, and it's going to default to on. It is a ranking factor, so you should have it on. But if you don't want it on for some weird reason, you're going to have to go in and manually turn that off. If you're booking enabled on LSA with Service Titan, it's going to automatically update to the new one when the new one rolls out. If you don't have booking enabled on LSA, but you use those, you can enroll with the booking system very, very soon. So if you don't have it on your Google Business Profile or LSA, but you use ServiceTitan, Jobber, or Workies, enroll. Google has come out and said that the more ways you give a customer to convert, the more likely that is to help your ranking. So they haven't come out and said, turn this on, it'll improve your ranking, but they say the more opportunities, more ways somebody has to convert will help your ranking. So if you don't have this, but you use one of the systems that LSA supports, I highly recommend getting your booking turned on, your text turned on, and your messaging turned on. What changes come with the new system? I don't know, Jonathan, because that's kind of rolling out right now with ServiceTitan. And Jobber and Workies, I'm not as familiar with as I should be, but if you have one of those three, I'm sure if you call your rep, you'll get an update pretty quick. I feel like it needed a pretty good facelift and some technology lifts. And I think that's probably what they focused on, but I do not know that question enough to answer it. That was it. We got done in 35 minutes. I want to just, again, if I can leave you guys with just a few things. One is please take 10 minutes today to think about what your goals are going to be for fourth quarter and what your KPIs are and share them. The second thing is the best two ways I think to capture ground and what's coming up are going to be make sure you get that LSA thing and GBP thing taken care of. Just make sure you're admin on both. And then finally, the biggest thing I think you can do to lift, someone asked me the other day, if they gave me a bunch more money to spend on their account, what would I do with it? And I said, I would tell you to take it and reinvestment in that 2 to 7 day follow-up. Put a retargeting campaign together to retarget customers day 2 to 7. Put an email campaign in to retarget customers who got an email address from days 2 to 7. Put a follow-up campaign, do ringless voicemail, invest in some of that tech, because if you can recapture even half of what they're saying happens in day 2 to 7, I promise I'll be on everyone's Christmas card lists. Any other questions, comments, or concerns before we call this one a wrap?
We'll get a follow-up email with some of the, I think I saw something in the chat feature about that, but we'll get a follow-up email, or do we need to click on that link in the chat?
Heather, that's a Heather question.
Yep, we will send out a follow-up email with a recording of this. So look for that probably in the next day or two.
Thank you.
And I realize your time, you guys, is the most valuable thing you have. So I appreciate you guys very, very much spending a little bit over a half hour with me. So thank you guys very much. If I can do anything to help, please let us know.
You're going to be in San Diego?
I'm not. We're next stars at the same time. So I'm down at the next star. We do have some representation at the Home Service Freedom event, though.
Well, our disappointment then.
Aw. Perfect. I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.